Hi family, I'm Dr. Brenda Woburiasti. I'm a licensed daycare provider, a published author of 3 children's books, an advocate, a consultant, a veteran's wife, and a mother. If you need help setting up your daycare service or just looking for great ideas to incorporate a play-based learning approach as well as learn about research-based solutions to issues impacting education, this is the channel for you. Subscribe, share, like. Thank you.
That's a great question, Dr. Brenda. I believe where you're from is anywhere that has an impact from you. Now, when I first gave breath, it was in Miami, Florida. But outside of Miami, I lived in Tallahassee, Florida. I lived in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. I lived in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I lived in Tampa. And I've traveled so many places throughout the U.S. And each one of those places has an impact on me because that energy that lives in those locations is a part of where you're from and the experiences that you have. So on a technical sense, where I am from is from Miami, Florida, but there are several cities that has made a major impact and an influence for how I think, how I see the world, how I see people. There are many cities, and especially when you live somewhere. I lived in Kentucky which was my first time living outside of Florida, and I lived in Kentucky for a good about 20 months. And during that time period, I learned that was my first time living in snow, experienced an ice storm, having to start a fire. So all those things play a huge impact on where I'm from, which allows me to be the person that I am today. And I think every city, state that you've ever, or country that you've ever lived in has a huge impact on the definition of where you're from. As I mentioned before, being born in Miami, my mom was a Haitian immigrant from the island of Haiti. Haiti is a very rich and diverse. It has a very rich and diverse history. I won't go too in depth about how I'm recently been very proud of being where I'm from. But my mom being born in the United States, my mom came from Haiti. She went to the Bahamas for a few, and then she came to the United States. But she was 7 months pregnant with me. So my first language is actually Haitian Creole. And so I speak English because of the fact that I went to American schools and went to schools in Miami. And I would admit now, my Creole is not that great, but I still communicate in it. When I speak to my mom, I still speak Haitian Creole. But my culture plays a huge factor about myself. Because that Haitian culture and the resiliency of Haitians and what they've been through with the slave trade and being the first independent country here in the Western Hemisphere has a lot of rich history behind it. So that plays a huge factor where I'm from. And as I mentioned before, I've traveled and I lived in a lot of different places. And I love just being a part of cultures. I love traveling. I love experiencing new things, new people, new cultures, new food. I love food. Who doesn't, right? Because food, it has a gateway into tapping into the culture and the rich history of a location. So about myself, one of the things that I'm really about and one of my core pillar of my core beliefs is understanding the freedom of time, understanding the freedom of money, understanding the freedom of relationships, and understanding the freedom of purpose. Once you define those things for yourself and understand exactly where you want to go in the directions that you want to head, it really just opens up different avenues. My pathway has actually allowed me to go a different course. Initially, I was in healthcare. And so as far as what do I do for work, I don't necessarily like defining it as work. I define it as what do I do to generate cash flow. So for several years, I went through Florida. I graduated from Miami, Florida at Miami Central Senior High School. Then I transitioned into Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, where I got my undergraduate degree in health information management. I am extremely grateful for FAMU because it gave me that opportunity to really dive in and be really independent. I come from an independent background, but really understanding how, as a young adult, what direction I was going to go in. And I am grateful to music. Music plays a huge factor into the direction that I went into. The reason why I went to Florida A&M University is because I did receive a scholarship in marching band, and that opened up an avenue because, quite honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do after high school. But my friends and I decided, I had a lot of our friends decided to go to Florida A&M, and then we also have Florida State that is across the tracks. But ultimately, music played a huge factor on the decision for going to Florida A&M. After I graduated from Florida A&M, I moved around for a little bit and then ultimately started working for the Department of Veteran Affairs. And I'm extremely grateful for the VA because that gave me an opportunity to really expand my horizon, because that opened up the door where I moved to Kentucky, living in Louisville. That position that I took on with the VA opened up so many doors. I traveled so much. I've been to Las Vegas. I've been to LA. I've been to Chicago, been to Nashville, been to so many places because of the VA. And because of that opportunity with the VA, I ended up living in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I lived in Puerto Rico for roughly about 2 years. And that really opened up so many doors because being from Miami, you're going to need to speak some Spanish, but you can get by without having to necessarily speak Spanish. Where being immersed in a Latin speaking country, and even though Puerto Rico historically still belongs to the U.S. because it's a U.S. territory and it's a Commonwealth, being immersed around nothing but Latin speaking. And even though working for the VA hospital, I was there, majority of my staff did not. I mean, just a small percentage of them spoke English. So it really forced me to really expand myself and really learn and immerse myself in the culture and respect them a whole lot from a different perspective. And so that plays a huge factor into where I am. And then from San Juan, after I was there, I moved over to Tampa, where I worked for Bay Pine VA healthcare system. And at that time, I was looking for a new direction. I am a person that loves challenging myself, and the experience that I had with the VA opened up so many opportunities for me really defining my leadership style. And I had opportunities where I've had at the very most 93 people reporting to me, with 4 supervisors reporting to me. And so that taught me to really tap into myself and understand who I am as a leader. And I wanted to continue on growing. So I seen an opportunity where I would now no longer work for the VA, but become a contractor. So that gave me more flexibility because now I was working remotely before COVID and before the new norm that we know it as. But before COVID, you're talking about 2014, I was working remotely and had an opportunity to really just understand my definition of what direction I was going to go in. So when it comes to currently right now, I am a contractor. I do a lot of small projects, large projects. I have my own consulting company. And so during that time period, I work with different organizations. Right now, I'm working for a nonprofit that is really catapulting and defining things for IET and open up avenues and funding for individuals that are from Haiti, also of Haitian descent, and giving them an opportunity to really allow their dreams to come into fruition. So I love working with organizations that are making a change, which is why I stayed with the VA for so long and then ultimately became a contractor for the VA, because I believe in a lot of what the VA does, because they're helping individuals that are sacrificing themselves for this country. So it gave me an opportunity. But I believe in several streams of income. So when it comes to work, like I mentioned before, I love music. So another cash flow is me being what I call a curator of music. A lot of people could define themselves as DJs or disc jockeys, but I call myself a curator of music or vibes. And I get a cash flow from that. I get cash flow from contracting. I get cash flows from the projects that I work on. So I have different streams of revenue that I believe in, because, again, searching after that freedom of time, you need to have different streams of revenue to ensure that you have that flexibility and bandwidth to do the things that you really desire. Yeah, so when I initially started with the VA, I started with a management training program called a technical career field intern. And it was within my actual background within health information management. So initially I was an intern. And then after, I think roughly about 20 months or so, I transitioned and that's when I moved down to San Juan. I was the assistant chief of health information management. Health information management comprises of medical records coding, comprises of releasing information, document solutions, medical records. So anything that really deals with the the integrity of the medical record is where my background comes from. I also, because of some different situations that came along with San Juan, the privacy officer that was there, she was the Privacy and Freedom of Information Act officer. She became pregnant, and so she had to take maternity leave. And so because of my background, they asked if I could become the acting privacy officer, Freedom of Information Act officer, FOIA for short. And I was that as well. So I was maintaining my assistant chief position and also being the Privacy and Freedom of the Information Act officer during that time. That's when I really did work directly with a lot of veterans, because whenever there was a privacy issue that came up, they would come to my office. Whenever there was a request for information through the FOIA office, I would be in contact with them, whether it be via letters, phone calls, or them physically coming in. So yes, I did have opportunities to directly be engaged with veterans, but typically within the HIM assistant chief role, the only time, unfortunately, you would be in direct communications with a veteran is if you're walking through your department and you end up going through release information, which is when a veteran want to request their medical records. You would interact with them then, or if there's an issue and it needs to get escalated to someone that's over that unit. So, but during the Privacy and Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, during the FOIA process, that's when I did have more direct communications with the veterans. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that question. One of the things I would say is that I grew up very religious. My mom, so Haiti has a very rich culture when it comes to religion because of the slave trade. And again, these are things that I'm just learning about within the last few years about myself and just doing some research, right? One of the things that growing up religiously, I was Catholic, I was Baptist, Southern Baptist, Protestant. My mom dived into a few different religions. And so it gave me a lot of opportunities to expose myself into different types of religious practices. Right now, currently, I can't necessarily say that there's a particular religion that I fall under. What I do believe in the connection with the universe and being able to just respect all living things. And when I say all living things, from the smallest microscopic insect that we can put our eyes on to the greatest things that we know within the universe, because we're all connected and we're all one. That's my personal spiritual belief, is just the unification and the symbiotic relationship that we have with all spiritual living things. So we have a tree in our backyard right now. We named her Mother Willow. I love just going out there, and it's cold right now in Tulsa. I'm in Tulsa right now, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And just the other day I went over there, and even though she's hibernating, she's in dormancy right now because it's winter. I still go out there and hug her. You know, I feel connected to her. I go out and I believe in grounding and connecting to the universe and connecting to the earth and being able to tap into all those things. So that's my current belief. But I am also grateful for, and I don't say but, and I am also grateful for the connection that my mom has instilled in me growing up, because being able to expose myself to different religions and seeing different concepts allowed me to have the open mindset that I have today. I have a really, really great friend, and I believe you interviewed him as well, Matthew Genius. He was Seventh-day Adventist, so I knew him since fifth grade. And he, during that time when he was going through his religious journey, he was always inviting me to church, and I did. I ended up going and really enjoying it. It was a different concept and a different way of seeing things and a different way of worshiping. So I'm always open to seeing how different cultures use worship. And so whatever that definition is for them, or spirituality and connections and religion. So I am very open when it comes to things on the religious space. Interestingly enough, that you asked this question last night, I was watching a video that was maybe about YouTube. You know, we always fall into that rabbit hole of YouTube, but because of my search, you know, the AIs are always navigating what we're looking up under. I ended up searching up one thing, and it opened up another video which talked about these aliens, Kunluk. I can't remember it, and I don't want to butcher the name. But anyway, so they're saying that the pyramids were created by these aliens, and that's the reason. And they're like the engineers of we are copies of them. We can connect with them, but we're We're just kind of their versions here on this planet. And so, as we all know, the pyramids are perfectly aligned on the equator. And so they're saying that they were the ones that put it on, and so on and so forth. You know, things like that. A lot of people, if you are really strong into your faith, especially from a lot of the religions that I grew up in, they say it's blasphemy, that it's, you know, it's the devil and all this other things. And for me, I'm just like, oh, okay, you believe that. That's great. You know, and I keep it going. And that's just kind of my mindset on things, is that we all are searching for whatever truth we want. And whatever truth it is, I'm never going to discredit your truth, because that's what you believe. And I just ask that if we all just understood and just respect each other for our own personal beliefs, I know a lot of the strives and issues that we're having globally would not be where we are today. Sorry, I have a morning routine. A part of my, I guess, my spiritual process, or whatever definition you want to call it, I definitely believe in routines. And one of my routines that I do one of the first things I do before I even try to get on my phone is only there for me to kind of wake up and see what time it is and then move on. But I journal in the morning. I light up incense. I get in a space where I'm really ready to kind of pour myself into myself. I send myself a personal text message. My wife and I, we just started now, my queen, as you know, Anu, we discovered there's an app called Marco Polo where you can send videos to different people within your group. But then we realized, hey, can we use this for ourselves? So we found a way, because we're using a Google Voice phone number. And so we send our message through a Google Voice phone number, was able to send ourselves messages. So that's one thing that I implemented now, is not only do I send myself a text message, but I also send myself a video every day, encouraging myself, telling myself how much I love myself, looking at myself and realizing that, hey, you're such a handsome and wonderful guy. You know, everyone loves you because you have that spirit and a vibrancy and an aura that gives out beautiful, radiant colors. And continue doing that, because growing up, I didn't believe that about myself. I didn't believe that I was handsome. I didn't believe I was a great person, or I just knew I had people that like being around me, but I per se didn't believe those things about myself. So as I started really diving into self, I started recognizing that I needed to love me more. I am a person that believes in manifesting joy, abundance, and greatness to myself and everyone that's within my orbit. That's what I do. Like, if you can't worry about who I am internally, then you don't know what I need to do financially, because that's irrelevant. Like, the finances, yes, that's one thing I know. We have to have a roof over our head. We have to eat. We have to do whatever we need to do financially, because that's how the system that we're in, right? But we've lost the connection of just self and recognizing people for who they really are and just feeling their energy. That's why I love children, you know, and going into our children's book is because my kids made me realize that, and my youngest per se, because my two oldest are from my mom. I love my mom and my wife, and I always interchange them together. But my wife, my two oldest are from my wife's previous, and a lot of people don't know that, and they wouldn't, just from I've been in my oldest daughter's life since she was 7, and my boy since he was 4. So obviously, those are my kids. Like, I don't even really think about it unless someone asks. And so, needless to say, when I had my biological, and I was actually seeing, you know, going through the birthing process and being in the room and things like that, that's when I started understanding how brilliant we are when we're children. You know, we're just sponges, and what it is, we're downloading. And so the programming, and you can see it, the father that I was to my oldest Nevaeh and my oldest son, Caden, the father that I was to them, I'm not the father that I am to Samuel, because there was so much growth that happened in that time period. So I'm learning these things, and I'm trying to change their programming to get them to understand that, look, and I've apologized to them. And I told them, look, the person that I was, the man that I was before, the father that I was before, I wasn't that right person for you then. I'm letting you know now I'm changed, and I'm changing. And in that process of changing, these are the things that I want you to instill into yourself. I want you to love yourself. I want you to care about yourself. I want you to understand that you are the greatness by you defining yourself. You know, all that other things, the things that I've done to you before, I apologize. Forgive me, you know. But, you know, I love kids. And so that's really where I recognize that I'm changing the programming that I had before. The things that I didn't want, I'm changing them. My motivation for writing Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, the coloring and activity book, is I noticed during my growth process is that the country living in the world that we live in is driven by finance, and understanding and having a good foundation of what finance is, assets, liabilities, and all these other things, right? And so I seen a new opportunity, and I done my research, and I had an opportunity, and I normally try not to use that phrase, I've done my research. I invested the time into learning what I was getting into. And so I understood Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and I have to give a thanks and shout out to, I barely use the app now, but Clubhouse. So Clubhouse came out, and I knew about Bitcoin back in 2013 when I lived in Tampa, and I was getting ready to invest into it. And because I didn't understand it, and I found out about it from an HBO series called Vice, and they were talking about it. And really what drew me to it was the fact that it was this new money that was untraceable. You know, the government couldn't trace it, and people are using it for illegal purposes. And I was like, I'm curious. And so I started doing some deep diving, and I found out about it, and I seen an opportunity where I can invest into it. And I didn't pull the trigger because I forgot. I just forgot, and it slipped my mind. So then fast forward in 2017, I was doing some contracting work on a farm, and the owner of the farm, he was approached by some guys that wanted to mine Bitcoin. And so these guys came in and they leased out a portion of the farm and they retrofitted one of the buildings, and they had all these what's called ant miners, which are these small computers that are mining. So think in the same concept of when you go in and mining for gold, it's kind of the same thing, but the computers aren't really using they're solving equations, and these equations that they're solving allows them, if the first computer, based off of the computing power that they use, allow them to be able to capture the coin or the reward of Bitcoin first. So the first to solve the problem is the first to get rewarded. So it sparked my interest again. And you would think that would have been that key moment of saying, hey, this is your opportunity to invest again. Again, I started diving into it, didn't pull the trigger. So COVID hits, and when COVID hits, that really gave me so much bandwidth and so much room to do more deep diving. And I said, you know what? Let me learn about Bitcoin. So I saw that there's a Bitcoin room, and the Black Bitcoin Billionaires Club, they Lamar Wilson, him, and Isaiah Jackson and Naja Roberts, and there's a few others. They really kind of broke things down to the chorus essential. And for me, what really drove me was the fact that it was people that looked like me. Before, maybe the main reasons why I didn't pull the trigger with Bitcoin was because it was people that didn't look like me, and I didn't understand it, you know? And so I needed someone that looked like me that could break it down to me in that purest sense. And because of the Black Bitcoin Billionaires Club, I was immersed. I spent hours in the room. I was meeting up with people. I was having conversations. I finally went in, and I was able to plug in with Fred, and Fred had an opportunity to show me that there was a online university that offered free education on blockchain and decentralization applications. And so I took it. I just immersed myself in all the knowledge that I could and just took it in. And during that time period, I said, my wife, she was writing tons of books. And obviously when you interviewed with her, she was writing the books that she was writing. So she had that zeal and that fire to write books. I never considered myself an author. If anything, I'm more of an orator. I love speaking. As you can tell, I talk. But as far as writing and creating something tangible for someone to read, that was never something that I felt passion for. But my wife, she said, hey, why don't you do something? You don't have to necessarily write a book. You can just do a coloring book and an activity book. And, you know, I kind of brushed it off. And then my friend, my best friend, Matt, he came in and said, man, you should write a book. And I'm like, that's just not my passion. You know, that's just not something I wanted to do. And so my wife just finally kept saying, look, I just need you to build the layout and then I'll do everything else. And I said, okay, fair enough. Since you're doing most of the work, I can do that. So we worked on it together. And because of her amazing knowledge and having the background and being able to be self-published, that kind of gave me the drive. But the passion behind why I did a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency activity book was for my kids. I wanted them to understand that there's a new digital money that's coming out. and oh, that's not even coming out, that's here. And I need them to understand that here's an opportunity where you can take instead of taking that money and going and buying some unhealthy trash at the stores, or spending money at the local convenience area, or buying things online, why don't you take a little bit of that, maybe about 50% of that. So instead of spending $10 or $20 on what you're going to buy that is a doll or a game. My son plays Fortnite and he spends, I don't even know how much money on these skins. And I'm like, you're buying digital skins. Why don't you buy digital currency? Or why don't you invest in digital currency? I was like, these are the things. So this was my passion behind why I created a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, the activity coloring book, because I needed to scale it down to a point where my kids can understand. But in the process, I realized that, you know what? This isn't just scaled down for my kids. There's a lot of people that just don't understand it. And we get caught up of saying that it's a children's book because it's for children. But realistically, reading is for everybody, regardless of how simple the words may or may not be. It's reading. Yes, there's illustrations in it, but I love pictures. I love visuals. I mean, obviously, we all love visuals, which is why when you're telling a story, it's more captivated when we look at movies, right? That same thing. It's still a story, but you adding the visuals to it. So I look at the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency activity book. It's not necessarily a children's book, even though that was my passion behind it, was for my children so that they can have an understanding for it. But it was a book really designed for everybody who wants to learn the initial steps on the building blocks for understanding Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Yes, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency coloring activity book is just exactly that. I focus on Bitcoin, and the reason why is because cryptocurrency in itself, understanding that it has a lot of complexities to it. And so what it's about is really just that. It's breaking all the core basic jargon that's used in the cryptocurrency world and breaking it down where it's really at its simplistic form that I put out there. Could it get more simplistic? Maybe, depending if someone else sees it from a different perspective. But from my view, this is the most basic building blocks that was designed for understanding Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and what they mean. So I have definitions in there. Obviously, I have some coloring in there. I have some illustrations that were done. And the reason why I went in the direction and thought that it was imperative. So initially, it was for my kids. I wanted them to be able to have something that they can draw, that they can spend, well, not necessarily draw, but color and fill in times. But I also realized that while you're taking the time to color, it's allowing you to still be connected to the book. Because as you're taking your time to color and fill in the spacing, add your variations to the different colors, you're still looking at the words. You're still looking at the illustrations. And so for me, that mindset was you're still being connected and building more of an understanding to it. I think we, more adults or big humans, should spend more time coloring. That's one of the things that I've been working on, is spending that time and that patience of just sitting down and coloring, because that allows you to relax yourself. It allows you to focus. And when you have an opportunity to look at some of those activities that's in there, it allows those concepts to resonate with you a little bit more. So as I mentioned, there is some coloring within the books. There's definitions within the books, and there's activities in the books. So the book consists of, we have word searches, fill in the blank, multiple choices. We have various different activities that's in the book, just to help you build, to establish a firm foundation and understanding the information that's contained within the book. My youngest right now is 7 years old, and I created this book. It was published in July 10th of 22. So that would mean he was about 6. So I would say anybody who's 6, because at that point I had him working on the book. I had him sitting down, understanding some of the concepts. And there's another book that we utilize as well that's focused on stocks and investments. So I had all my kids working on those books. So I would say the age frame is from six up. If a child is able to read, then they are able to start understanding the concept behind assets and finances and things like that. So I would say 6 and up. And I don't put a ceiling on it because, as I mentioned before, this is not, because the concept is so innovative and new. Most people don't even know what blockchain is. Now, there has been, because of the fact of media and access, social media, there has been a lot of talks about Bitcoin and what it does and things like that. And, you know, it's there's a lot of information that's out there. And so a lot of people, they hear it, but don't truly understand it. So that's why I say at this point, it's just 6 and up. There isn't a ceiling because you're never too old to learn. You should be, because I believe I'm a lifetime learner. So we should always be students. Absolutely. My son right now, he loves video games. He's actually built his first video game last year. And one of the things he talks about is, hey, Dad, I want to invest some of my money in Nintendo. I want to put some of my money in Bitcoin. This is a 7-year-old, because these are the things that I'm implementing into him. And just the other day, a good friend again, Matt, we were FaceTiming, and he and his daughters, they were playing Cash Flow. He has triplet girls, and then he has his oldest daughter. He has other kids too as well, but that core was playing Cash Flow. And if you're not familiar with that, well, that's a board game that is designed on understanding the cash flow, choosing a career, choosing a path, and things like that. But he's built, and his daughters are between the ages of 10 and 13. And so that's just opening up. I'm sorry, maybe about 11. But that's allowing them to see how the real world works. You know, this is the real world that we're in. And the sooner that they can understand cash flow and how to generate cash flow, and they can tie generating cash flow to what are your core beliefs and the things that you really desire in life. And when you can find those core beliefs, understand who you are, and build a cash flow to it, it just opens up so many infinite opportunities for you. My publishing journey was amazing because I did not have to do majority of the work. My wife, again, Anu, she ended up just being just a tremendous foundation and support with the creation of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because she understood the process. By the time I developed this book, she was on her either 6th or a 7th children's book. So by this time, she already had relationships built. Normally what she goes through is the process of finding an illustrator, whether she uses Fiverr or any of those applications that are out there that allow you to find contractors that can do those things. The person that goes in and does the formatting for the book, she finds all that. She found all of that, and she already had individuals that she was working with in the past. And so it was very streamlined. It was just all I was doing, which is what I'm a master for, is just approval and disapproval. My background as a project manager, program manager, I'm just used to saying, yeah, that works. No, that doesn't work. Let's look at some other opportunities. So she really just made life so much simpler for me. So my journey isn't necessarily the best way to illustrate what that publication process looked like because I didn't have to do a lot of it. I would recommend watching her video, and she could kind of describe what her journey was like. But again, I had an amazing foundation, and that just really helped me really push the needle forward with the development and the final product of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.